Welcome to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast, brought to you by the Wealthy Speaker School. This is the podcast dedicated to people who want to speak more as a way to build their income and grow their business. Welcome, everyone, to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. I'm your host, Jane Atkinson, and today we're talking about how to balance a crazy busy day job or a crazy busy business while launching a speaking career or a speaking business. And when I think about people who made it look easy, I think about my friend, Erin Gargan King. Welcome back to the show, Erin.
Thanks, Jane. Great to see you.
I'm so glad to have you back. Now, we did a show earlier, and we'll have Monica put it in the show notes about social media, which is really your background. But talk about you have this thriving social media agency, and you say, hey, I want to speak. And you probably were getting pulled into speaking anyway. How long ago was that? And fast forward us to kind of what's going on today in your business.
Well, about 3 years ago, I met a fellow speaker at one of my very first gigs.
You can drop names here if you like.
Okay. Well, her name was Kendra Hall, and she was fantastic. And I asked her, how did you make this your full-time business? And she said, well, I met this gal named Jane Atkinson. And my husband said, that's the book we just read, the Wealthy Speaker, or it might have been the Epic Keynote. And we couldn't believe it. So then you and I connected, and you really helped me to pick my lane and develop my pub method and really set me up for success at a very early stage in my speaking career. So I'm really grateful that I met you early on.
Okay, but wait a second here, because you seem to come out of the gates like, and I'm mixing my analogies here, like a rocket. You're coming out of the starting gate. First you're a horse, and then you turn into a rocket. And I mean, geez, I think that there must have been some momentum and some things going on ahead of time. Like, so talk a little bit about your company.
Okay.
And then talk about, like, were you already getting asked to speak?
Okay, so my company is Socialite Agency. We started back in 2010 running social media for large events. We started with one very small client working from my kitchen table, and a series of events occurred where we ultimately ended up working with everyone from the United States Navy to the Oscars over the course of 8 years. So I have a network of over 50 contractors in the US and Canada. And we're essentially like a street team, like journalists. So we go to these events, conferences, trade shows, and we put a microphone and a spotlight around keynote speakers and thought leadership across all different industries, like you name it. And so we were at one of these events. It was the Apex SEMA Automotive Show in Las Vegas.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Which aren't exactly my people, because I don't even know anything about cars, but these are like 120,000 gearheads, right? And it's the car show. And so we're there, and the meeting planner comes up to me, and she is in tears and just a mess, and said, we had a social media speaker scheduled for this breakout, and they missed their flight, they weren't feeling well, whatever happened. And she said, can you get up there and talk about what you've been doing on social media for this event? And so I ran upstairs to my hotel room, created 5 PowerPoint slides, and
way to go.
Rolling up my eyes, I'm like, here we go. This is crazy. Went up there, and I just shared my experiences in what we've done with our clients. It was nothing flashy, just talking from experience. And I'm like, well, that was kind of fun, So afterward, I had a couple different people in the audience from these different organizations say, well, we'd love to have you come in and speak to our team. And what do you charge? And I didn't know it was a business. I didn't know you could get paid. And I thought to myself, well, that's really fun, right? So from there, it's funny because before Socialite, I had 2 other ventures. Jump Digital Media was a web development company when I was 25. And I also had another company called PMS.com, which was a Dollar Shave Club. Instead of razors, we shipped tampons. So I've had a couple different ventures. And of all 3 of my ventures, the one that I've worked on creating the least, the one that sort of created itself and gotten the most momentum, is this speaking business, which is totally insane. And I pinch myself every single day. I cannot believe that I get to do this and get paid. It's just crazy.
I think I was trying to, distill this and figure out, well, what is really the message for people? And I think it's got to be to have really good, solid content. And I think that you bring a level of passion as well to the game, and this like certain kind of positive energy. People just want to be around you. You're cool. I mean, think about how in the world did you land the Oscars as your client? Like, what did you do to make that happen? And I'm thinking it's that same secret sauce that gets you
Mhm.
asked for speaking.
Well, it's, they say that luck is when hard work meets preparation, and that was
Mhm.
the Oscars. I had been working from one client, my kitchen table, and if you work from home, it was one of those days where you're still in the pajamas without the teeth brushed, and it's noon, and you're thinking to yourself, like, what is my life, right? And at that moment, I went to pay a cell phone bill, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to pay the cell phone bill, jump in the shower, get this day going. And it was only $100, and I realized I couldn't pay my cell phone bill. I didn't have enough money for a $100 freaking cell phone bill. And in that moment, I was like, you know what? It was like a shame spiral. And I thought to myself, if I can't pay this bill next month, just go get a job. Like, this is your third venture. At what point is it not that the idea wasn't good enough? And maybe just that you're not good enough. And maybe that's okay. And so I remember journaling about it. And when you're journaling, you write the weirdest stuff. And the words, the stars will align, came out of my journaling, which is so California, like hippie crap. But I was like, what is this? And so that my little mantra, get our mantras. And I was running and I was in the shower and the stars will align, the stars will align. Anyway, a month later, nothing's aligning. It's a disaster. I'm about to quit. So I stopped work and I sat on the couch and I turned on the TV and I poured a glass of Chardonnay the size of like a fishbowl and felt sorry for myself. And the Oscars came on later that night and I was feeling lonely. I was single. I was like, my life's in the tube. Like, I just hate everything. So I started going on Twitter and just kind of looking for friends, as one does. And I tweeted some things about the Oscars and I just said, hey, it's a great broadcast, but it's a little long, it's a little boring. I kind of want to see what's really happening backstage. Like, is George Clooney talking to Matt Damon? Like, wouldn't it be cool if we had
Right.
this whole other experience? Long story short, a week later, I got a message from someone at the Oscars, a producer, who had seen my tweet that people had kind of latched onto and started making comments about. And he said, I see you do social media. We were talking about a similar idea. Love to hear what you have to say. And they brought me into the office. And I wanted to go in there and be like, I'm broke, hire me. Oh my God. But I didn't. And I just offered some ideas, tried to be personal, useful, brief, my mantra. And they ended up giving me the contract. And I remember sitting in my Prius in LA. My husband calls it the Middle Eastern Iraqi Prius. It's like beat to death, right? I've sold it now, but it used to be my great car. And I'm sitting there and I'm bawling, crying, holding this contract. And I realized that we were doing social media for the Oscars and the stars had freaking aligned, literally.
Hmm.
I couldn't believe it. So, and then that led to Fashion Week and all these other different crazy experiences. But it only takes that one big stage or that one big client that can just change everything for you no matter where you are. And it sounds so cliche, but
Yep.
really you just need that one big break.
And we call them flashpoints, and you have had several flashpoints, no doubt, in this short 3-year stint that you've had so far in speaking. Um, Having good content. Let's talk about your book as a flashpoint as
Mm.
well. Talk about let's hear the title of the book and where can people buy it, because we're going to put a link on the show to it on the show notes.
The book is called Digital Persuasion, and you can find it on Amazon.com.
Okay, great. And how big of a flashpoint do you think that the book was for your speaking business?
Well, it certainly lends a gravitas to what you're doing when you've taken all of your ideas and put them into a book. What I tried to do was shortcut the process, and I hired a company called Book in a Box after
Hmm.
hearing it on James Altucher's podcast. It's Tucker Max's company.
Yep.
And they basically, that you pay them and you go on these calls and you talk about what you know and they record it and then they kind of ghostwrite it for you. So I tried doing that and it was a disaster because I'm a writer and I'm a speaker and I'm a communicator. And so for anyone that's looking to shortcut that process, if you're in another industry besides marketing, communications, like if you're a scientist or you're a data person, yes, do that. But if you are a communicator, write your own damn book because you're never
Mm.
going to be able to have someone capture your voice the way that you come across. And so I ended up after all this time and all these editors and all this wasted money, and they were awesome. Like, they were so nice. They did their best. But ultimately I was like, you know what, guys, I'm going to do this. So
Yeah.
I locked myself in a room for 10 days, wrote the whole thing. They helped me with the editing at the end, but if I could go back and change it, I would have just started on my own from the beginning. As far as a flashpoint, I think that it's nice from a meeting planner standpoint when they can explain that you are an author and here is an anchor point. Here's a physical manual handbook takeaway that you can use as a guide.
Right.
And I think it makes it easier for you as a professional because we, especially in the world of social media, we're so scattered. You have your blog, you have your website, you have all these things. But when you have the book is sort of but everything that really matters, the cliff notes, all the highlights are just right here in this one simple place. So
right.
I do believe that it helps you to get higher speaking fees. I know when you and I were working together, the book allowed me to bump my fee up. So I wasn't just, the CEO of an agency, because then people are saying, well, you can just speak for exposure, and don't you want leads for your business? And so when you're an author, your words and your thoughts, that is your business. So it helps you to cross over from that, this could get you more clients space, to this is your business, right?
Beautiful. You are the queen of social media, as we've already determined. Talk about how you use social media in your own business to get speaking engagements, and what some of those flashpoints might have been, like when, that one really, really worked.
Yes. Oh, my favorite question. Okay. So I have been running social media for Visa, Siemens, Hitachi, Johnson & Johnson, Abbott Laboratories, you name it. We've done every major company. And what's funny is it's kind of like the cobbler's son has the worst shoes, right? You see website companies that have horrible websites because you're spending all your time doing it for everyone else. And so there came a point probably about a year ago when I realized I'm a social media expert with all these companies, but mine is crap, right? Like, because when I was in my own time, I didn't want to do social media because that was my job.
And you were busy, right? You were busy doing other things.
Yes, right. And as a side point from your earlier question with Socialite, I ended up hiring a Canadian actually to be the CEO of my organization. And I took a huge pay cut. And to this day, Socialite, I only make a very small amount of money from my agency, and the gal who runs it makes more money than I do from that business. So if you want to transition over, oftentimes you have to outsource and give up some of that money and profit in order to move into what you know you're called to actually really be doing.
Okay.
And it's taken a couple of years, by the way, to build back up to where I was. Another story. But so with the social media question, the thing is, on social media as speakers and authors, our egos are totally out of control. Like everyone does the same couple of things. I'm so honored to have been here. It was so fun. I'm so excited to see you all. Thanks for having me. My new book came out. It's like the same 10 pieces of content. And what I don't understand is, as speakers and as authors, we have so much more to talk about and share, and so many ideas. And so in the last year, I've focused on, first of all, one platform, doing one platform really, really well.
And what's your one?
Instagram.
Yeah, I thought so.
Those are my people. That's where they are. And so fish where the fish are. On all of my other platforms, I say, come find me on Instagram, on my profile picture. And as a social media expert, I can tell you that doing one platform well, I have tripled my following in 12 months, real followers, which, by the way, artificial influence is everywhere. People are buying followers, they're buying engagement. It's a disaster as far as that, because that's not going to help you in the long run. You're not getting that real engagement. And so by coming from a place of service, with my whole personal, useful, brief method, what I've been doing is when I go live or when I offer videos, it's all about offering these ideas freely, offering things that are not serving our egos and trying to make us look big and amazing. But if someone scrolls through their newsfeed, is what you're saying going to persuade them to stop the scroll because you have given them something, you have given them an idea. And an idea is the currency of social. That is how you exchange that value of follow for idea. And it doesn't have to be like this life-changing advice, but every day a little digestible nugget that's helpful. And some speakers are doing a great job with it. And others, you're thinking to yourself, gosh, I know you have so much to share. Why are we stopping here? So I don't know if it's because speakers maybe feel that by giving away their intellectual property, it's not going to get them hired. I can tell you right now that is not true, because I have gotten 80% of my new leads for gigs are someone tagged a friend in my Instagram TV or my live or my post and said, check out this gal. And they watch your videos and they get to know you and they get your vibe. And it's like, just because you hear Taylor Swift on Spotify doesn't mean you wouldn't love to go see her in concert, And so
Right.
that's sort of where I think a shift needs to happen. So for me, I'm constantly trying to check the ego and not be, buy my book, look at my stuff, aren't I amazing? I'm constantly thinking, is this personal to my audience? Can they see themselves in my shoes? Because for example, if you're a speaker and you're saying like, there I was on stage. Well, your audience isn't on stage. They don't know what that feels like.
Right.
So they can't relate. So what I try to do with my event recaps is I'll try to share a moment, whether it was before, during, or after, that is more relatable to your audience. Maybe it was a question the audience member had that other people might have had, and then offering a useful answer. And then keeping it brief, making sure that you're really landing the plane on what matters.
Love it.
One thing that's very helpful for speakers that are trying to build their social media following from their events is this is what I do. I offer an interactive Q&A on social media after the event. Meeting planners tend to really love to pay extra for this, because what you're doing is you're providing a solution to them in a space where they're exhausted. They've done their event. No one died. Everyone loved it. They're ready to go on vacay. They're ready for the cocktail, right? They're over it. However, attendees are in a totally different psychology. Their attendees are like fired up, ready to change the world. So that gap right there is where you can fill in and say, okay, you've been home for a week or 2 weeks. Let's move from ideas to implementation. Jump on the live with me, meet me on Instagram. And now they've had a chance to try some of these things. Fire your toughest questions at me. And let's talk about implementation, actual, how you can walk the walk now that you've heard the talk. And
Beautiful.
This is really helpful.
I missed what you said, though. What channel do you use live for that?
I use Instagram Live for
Instagram Live. Okay.
Interactive Q&A. And what I'll do is when I collect my emails during my talk, I offer to send them a 2-page cheat sheet of all the notes. So I get the email. And then after, I send an email about a week later and say, it was great meeting you. I know that you learned A, B, and C. How's it going? Let's talk about it. And then that email goes out anywhere from a couple hours before the live to the next day, anywhere from a 24-hour period. It's not like, hey, in a week, people don't plan that far ahead.
Right.
So I'll usually say, like, tomorrow, meet me on live. They all jump on. They forward it to their friends that weren't there or people that couldn't make it. And now you're starting to cultivate a tribe as opposed to just random acts of social.
I love it. I love it. And I really think that a lot of your success comes down to kind of like this combination of hustle and chutzpah. You really have, you're out there doing it, and it looks to me like you're always hustling. Do you talk a little bit about your day and what that looks like? Like, how much time, for instance, would you be spending every day on social?
Okay. So if you haven't checked your screen time, do you follow your screen time, Jane? Do you know how many hours a day you're on your phone? Okay. So It's terrifying. If you have an iPhone, go under your settings, look at screen time. One day I did this and I realized that I had spent 4 hours on Instagram. So I did the math and I realized if I kept at this pace, I would be spending 9 years of my life behind the screen of my phone on social media.
Right.
And no one on their deathbed gives a shit about Instagram. So it's like I need to get some balance here. So what I've been doing is limiting myself to 2 hours of social media a day and running a successful company talking about social media on social media while only spending 2 hours. What this does for me is it makes sure that I'm not telling myself that I'm working, but I'm really just scrolling down the black hole of comparison and who's ahead of me and doing bigger audiences and all this crap that's just like a losing game that you can never, ever win. So why even play? So for my social media, what I do is I try to create a very clear workflow. Okay. So here's what my week looks like. I do 2 to 3 static posts a week. So static post meaning to your profile.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how I recommend clients like speakers or authors or brands approach profile versus stories, which is kind of your ephemeral disappearing content.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is your profile, think of it as a first date or a job interview. Someone hits your profile and within 2 or 3 scrolls, they've decided how they feel about you. They've decided that they know who you are and what you're about. So you want to really put your best foot forward, not your fake foot forward, but your best foot forward. For me, I batch my content. I hire a nice photographer. I work with Kara Beth Nixon, who does a lot of speakers in our circle of friends. She does a great job. She's here local in OC. And we will shoot for 2 hours. I'll get enough photos to last me for 3 months, dripping about 2 or 3 every week. And I change outfits very quickly, like every 5 minutes, change an outfit and go somewhere else. It's very, rapid. And what you're doing on these photos is you're showing about you on your profile and making sure it's very high end and lovely. You show about you, but you type about your audience. It's fine to have all these glamour shots about you, but make sure that the content is a story that helps them, a takeaway, an inspiring thing, not just like, here I am looking amazing again, because then everyone, you're not a Kardashian. No one really cares, It's like, you know what I'm saying?
So you book a lifestyle photo shoot.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just doing some casual things is what you're offering. You're not talking about a speaker photo shoot. Let's get clear about that, right?
Yeah, I do lifestyle for my my profile because I believe that people come to your profile to get to know who you are as a person quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And so you want to show them who you really are. And I'm not a corporate person. I like to surf and mountain bike and do all these outdoorsy things. So that's what I have on my profile.
Right.
People will get to know the real you sooner or later. So you might as well put your best foot forward. I had the hair, I had the makeup, the lashes, the spray tan. Okay. But but doing what I like to do. Right. So it's that intersection of authentic and best foot forward for the profile. Okay.
Right.
Now for your stories, for your disappearing content, your ephemeral content, that's more, if you think about your profile as your house, you want to have a nice, lovely, clean, beautiful house. That's your brand.
Right.
Inside the house, those are your stories. That's your everyday, what you're eating, what you're drinking, who you're with, where you're traveling, the funny things, the weird things. That's the real and the raw and the unscripted. That's when you can be speaking on a stage every single day. When you think about ephemeral content, you can be jumping in with your audience and sharing thoughts and ideas and book recommendations, and you can be offering value every day to them. Now, the key with stories is that there's a balance between TMI and keeping in touch, and KIT, right? So KIT, keeping in touch, is good. TMI is not. So if you upload more than 5 to 6 talking head clips, people are going to swipe because they're over it. So what I have found to be very helpful to keep people engaged on my talking head stories, whether it's whatever you're sharing, your book, your event, your ideas, whatever, is if you kind of let them know where they are in the swipe. So I will say this is 1 of 5, 2 of 5, 3 of 5 on the caption.
Right.
So it's like when you're in a survey or something, how much further you had to hang in there. I found that little trick keeps people watching all the way through by 5x versus when I didn't do that. And
Good.
so the stories are just very basic, right? They're you being who you are. They're you building a relationship with your following. And then you have your live, right? I spend time doing lives. I try to go live at least once a week, twice a week if I can. And those lives, they're promoted before, during, and after to my list. They have a very clear purpose. And I incentivize people to jump into the conversation by offering a signed free copy of my book to the best question during that session, during that live. And as my friend Brian Fanzo says, when it comes to live, I think we're always nervous because it's real time and things can go wrong. But he always says, just push the damn button. And I love that because just jump in. Things go wrong when you're on stage at a real event anyway. So just kind of, show up and do you, and don't be so worried about how you're coming across, because what you're doing that maybe you feel like isn't perfect is actually winning people over with your vulnerability. And in a world of filters and Photoshop and all the things, it's very refreshing to just be doing you.
Yeah, I think authenticity is definitely making a huge comeback here, and we're going to continue to see more and more of that. Now, for those of you who are like, oh my gosh, I need more of these tips, we are actually having Erin Gargan King come to our event, our live event, Accelerate Live 2020, which is happening in March 6th and 7th. And for more information on that, check out our show notes. We'll go ahead and put a link to that in the show notes. And what I really would like you to do while you're right there with us in Phoenix, Erin, is just kind of walk us through this is how we're doing it, because I think there's still a lot about what you're talking about that is still a little bit intimidating to people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think getting more familiar with it will be really, really helpful, don't you?
Absolutely. And sometimes when I explain all this to speakers, fellow speakers in my different mastermind groups,
Yeah.
sometimes they get a little bit like
their eyes start
overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Well, but what I tell them is that you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. And when it comes to social media, I look at it. It doesn't have to be an and. It's not you're doing all these things and social media. For me, I identified areas that weren't delivering for me, and I made social media an or. So I replaced certain things with social,
Right.
always adding it on and making it feel like one more thing to do.
Yeah, and I love that you said you went all in on one channel and that all of the other channels direct everybody over to the one channel. And I would say, I mean, wouldn't you agree that Instagram is likely going to be the one of the future? It certainly seems to be the one of today.
Well, it depends on your audience. If
Yeah.
you're in a B2B environment, you might be more YouTube or LinkedIn.
Mhm.
If you have an older demographic, it might be Facebook. If you're trying to go younger, it might be Snapchat. For me, my biggest demographic is women that are 25 to 50 plus that are typically working in the direct selling MLM space, and they tend to live on Instagram. So find where your tribe is spending the most time. Doing one platform, obviously the more places you are, the better. But for me, I found it more manageable to be living my life and really going deep and narrow and strong on one platform. That's
Right.
me. Some people are totally capable of running 2 or 3 platforms if they have a larger team to be able to dedicate to that. More places you can be, the better. However, it's much better to crush one channel than half-ass 5 channels.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that probably the latter is what a lot of people, and myself included, have done in the past. Now, I would love, with you, with this crazy busy lifestyle that you have, what are a few you've already talked about maximum 2 hours on social media. This is your business, so it makes sense for you to go 2 hours on social. What are some hacks that you have with your time that really would be helpful to other speakers? What are some things that you do? Because you've come so from outside of this industry, I feel like everything you do is refreshing.
Oh, well, thank you.
You do it in a unique way. Maybe refreshing was the wrong way, but you are a breath of fresh air. But I think that the way you do things and the way that you come at things, I'm always thinking to myself, I think I'm sometimes too steeped in the speaking industry to see these paths, and you have these paths.
Well, I appreciate that, because on the flip side, sometimes I hear people, you hear Scott Stratton talk about he knew he wanted to be a speaker ever since he saw Les Brown. And I'm always like, wow, that's so cool. And then you hear other people say that they took, debate team or speech team in high school. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, do I even belong in this world? People have been doing this their whole lives. They've been performers. And so it's nice to hear that there's more than one way to be in this business. It's very refreshing to hear that.
Yes, for sure.
So to answer your question, the thing that a lot of the speakers that I'm friends with and that I talk with a lot about this is there is this pressure that we put on ourselves to say, what should I create? And there's this big burden of creation. What are we going to create? You have the blinking cursor on the dreaded white blank page, and it's so overwhelming. Like, we're already creating keynotes and, creating more. And it's like, no, we don't have to create anymore. You're already existing in a lifestyle, in a business where you are constantly creating content, whether it's on your webinars, at your events, on podcasts like this. You are constantly having dialogue, even on your client calls, the planning calls, on the calls that you're having when someone's speaking if they want to hire you. The key is, with permission, always make sure you ask permission. I record everything I do. So for example, this podcast, I asked you, can I record this? Do you mind, Jane? Because after this, I'm going to cut 2 or 3 30-second clips and now check my Instagram story is done for the day with some great tips for my fellow speaker friends.
This will be your thing for Instagram. Woohoo!
Yes. It's all about the shortcut. It's about the twofers, right? I mean, and if you're, for example, if you're at an event, it's like, I think we come home from these events like, oh, now what do we post? You have a microphone and a spotlight at distribution network right in the palm of your hand. As soon as you are about to go on stage or when you get off stage, fire that thing up and just share how you're feeling and share what's happening. If you are in the line after you finish speaking and everyone is asking you questions, I all the time will say, do you mind if I just record what we're talking about? And half the time they say, sure, of course. And you get what they're saying, get what you're saying. It's okay if it's not perfect and polished because the content is, you're already creating it. It's just getting in the habit of thinking to yourself, how can I put what's already happening on the internet? The best thing I do is I record all of the sales calls that I do with bureaus and with potential prospects that are going to hire, like meeting planners. I ask if I can record it, and they always think it's really weird, but I don't care because when you're selling yourself and you're selling your ideas, you're giving mini keynotes, and that is great content because it's real and it's raw and it's passionate, and it's a lot better than just turning on the camera on a Tuesday and being like, all right, let's rally the energy, right? So it's all about thinking about looking for opportunities to find that twofer and to amplify more of what you are already so good at doing.
Leverage, leverage, leverage. I love that. And I love the idea of before, or I suppose it's really mostly after an event, talking about what the coolest thing that happened in the room was. That's coming at it from a totally different, what if it was even something that was unexpected, like the fire alarm went off or something like that? I mean, that would be something you could post about, right?
Yeah, and telling the stories that people share with you in that Q&A line afterwards. I mean, if you give a good speech, at least one person is going to come up to you afterwards and they're going to have their eyes lit up and they're going to have a question. Even if someone heckles you, or you have a bad situation. I had a gig I did in Texas. It was 20,000 of these MLM people in this monster stadium, and they are a premium energy supplement.
They come fully charged.
They are on caffeine. I don't even drink caffeine because I'm already a spaz enough as it is. But anyway, I mentioned Starbucks, which is like they're very anti-Starbucks by accident. And I thought to myself, I mentioned they all started booing Starbucks.
Right.
1,000 people. So how you respond to that and get out of it. I posted that entire story. It got 2,000 likes, 700 comments, all of them cheering me on. Like it was just being real and not being like, I had this perfect gig and I'm Tony Robbins and I'm a rock star, right? It's like, that's tired. It's not true, just
I read that. I saw that post about the Starbucks, and I love it when you fess up and say, "Oh, something did not go well. It did not go right." I mean, I was literally getting booed, and that's probably what you led with on your social media posts. Like, how did I get booed by 20,000 people? And then you tell the story and bring it back around again. Like, so clever, so well done.
Well, and they all cheered me on social media. They're like, you were great. We loved it. We weren't booing you. We were booing Starbucks. So you kind of get that two-way dialogue because social media is not a broadcast. It is a conversation. And if you don't have two-way dialogue, look at what you're doing, because if you're just broadcasting about you and what you're doing and no one is responding, maybe it's time to think about switching it up a little bit.
For sure. For sure. All right. Final question to bring us home. If you could circle back all the way to 3 whole years ago, young Erin, what advice would you be giving to young Erin just starting out in the speaking industry?
Well, I would give her the exact same advice as Erin today, because I've been in this business not very long, which is that just to trust yourself, that you actually
know what to do. Yeah.
And you know what you're doing, and that there's not one perfect way, and you don't have to be like anybody else. You can just do you, and And it's so much easier than trying to play a different character, So take the pressure off. Just do you.
Do you. And you is perfect, I must tell you. Thank you so much, Erin, for being on the Wealthy Speakers Show. And for those of you who'd like to get more information, let's share your website too for folks.
Sure. It's Erin Gargan, Gargan, King.com.
Lovely. And thank you for being on the show with us today, Erin. Most appreciated.
Thanks, Jane. Great to see you.
I can't wait to hang out with you in Phoenix for Accelerate Live 2020. That feels like it's a long ways away, but I know it's going to be here before we know it. And for those of you who are listening in, and if you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave us some comments and ratings and reviews. We would love to see them. We would love for you to subscribe. And with that, we're going to say thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you soon, Wealthy Speakers. Bye for now, everyone. Hey, thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed our show, you'll want to come and visit us at the Wealthy Speakers School, where we provide a proven roadmap for building your dream business. Go to wealthyspeakerschool.com. And for show notes for today's podcast, head on over to speakerlauncher.com and click on podcast. I'll see you soon, Wealthy Speakers.